Welcome to Super Connected with me, Tim Arnold, and my special guests. We invite you to join us in an intimate and honest exploration into the theme of connection. What it means to be connected to each other, what it means to be connected to ourselves, and what it means to connect in an ever-changing world. Anna Smith is a film critic, broadcaster, chair of the London Film Critics Circle and host of the podcast Girls on Film, which was listed as the best feminist film podcast by Stylist magazine. A long-time contributor to Time Out, Metro, The Guardian and Sight and Sound, Anna appears regularly on BBC TV, radio and Sky TV. She tweets from @AnnaSmithJourno, and I'm thrilled that she's joining me now for Super Connected. Anna, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm good.
Oh, pleasure. And we finally did it.
Yay.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things that I'm going to ask you about. But to begin with, the obvious. We're all in lockdown. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. And somehow the film industry is, reinventing itself every couple of minutes. Tell me and tell our listeners about that from, your perspective at the moment.
Well, it's been a fascinating journey because I was going to screenings and doing junket interviews just days before lockdown, and there was a nervousness in the air about whether these big releases would actually happen. And then very suddenly it became clear that a lot of the big releases that I'd just seen would be postponed till much later in the year. And then more and more got cancelled. And in the Critics Circle, obviously, a lot of our members were very worried about making a living because we were starting to lose work. And we were all very worried about our friends in the film industry. But what has been fantastic is to see that the way, like many other industries, the film industry has managed to adapt and to rise to the challenges that are now presented to us. And so many film releases are now going digital if they can. And a lot of what would have been done on stage and filmed has been done in people's own homes. And it's been extraordinary, really, to see how fast that has happened and how film companies and actors and producers and writers and directors have come up with creative solutions.
Are you like me, where you sort of, receive the sad and at times horrific side of what's happening globally and in our country, but at the same time as seeing some positive things, which sounds strange, there are people who are dying, there are people who are suffering, obviously the terrible situation with the NHS and how they've been treated. It is awful, but there are lots of pockets of positive sides to what's happening, aren't there?
There are. I mean, I'm generally a very positive person like you, and I think the thing is you're right, you have to caveat it with everything you've just said, because you don't want to be this big Pollyanna figure going, oh, everything's fine, because it's
No.
because it's not. And I've had moments where, especially looking at the news and reading the news, where I've been very upset for the terrible suffering that people are going through right now. It's agonizing for so many people. But yes, in terms of, I'm fortunate in my own life not to have been badly affected so far, although some friends and relatives have been affected. So I am looking at the silver linings in terms of the industry and in terms of the way that I can go about my job, but also the learning curve of how much you can communicate with friends and connect with friends online and down the phone, and things that you don't normally bother to do. You wait to see friends, and then you go, oh, I can't meet for another 3 months, we're all so busy. And then you don't pick up the phone. And now I'm speaking to those people way more than I was before, because we're going, well, we can't meet, so let's just have a Zoom call or whatever,
Yes, I mean, we're sort of over 5 weeks now, I think, into this period of lockdown in the UK, and I was, before it started, I was in the middle of working on a project that was criticising the use of screens
Well, yeah, exactly. It's funny, isn't it? Now suddenly we've done an about
questioning
turn.
it.
Yeah, we've done an about turn and we're going, actually, there are lots of real positives. Because people used to say rightly, and I'm sure you'll agree that there are many bad things about social media, for example, because it makes people less social. They're not actually talking to people around them. But now it's a godsend because people are connecting that way so much, and particularly people living on their own. My goodness, if you didn't have the internet and you're living on your own right now, how hard would that be? I know it's hard anyway, but even harder, I would think. Yeah.
No, it's the same. And I mean, my own experience of this is that, of course, I have a mother that lives in another country that I usually see every 6 weeks because I go to see her. I haven't, but thank goodness for various platforms where I can see her on screen and she can see me. So I'm sure there's thousands of people like that.
Yeah, definitely. I just need to get my dad using Skype. He hasn't mastered it yet. But we're doing phone calls. We're doing more phone calls. It's nice to be able to do that.
My issue with looking at what's happening to us and our dependency now on screen time is that I look at the world through a Terry Gilliam lens all the time. Is
that healthy? I'm not sure.
I don't think it is really, but yeah, they made me like that. So yeah, I'm just looking at the dystopian freakery of it all.
Yeah, exactly. I think that in a weird way that there is definitely something very cinematic and filmic about this, and that initially intrigued me. I mean, it alarmed me, obviously, but I was thinking, God, I've watched and reviewed so many films about an apocalypse, or let's hope that isn't this, but about pandemics and about terrible worldwide disasters, and I actually never sort of dreamed I'd witness a crisis of this level panning out in my own life, and the professional in me is sort of quite intrigued about how how some films have got it right and wrong, and it's fascinating, really.
Yeah, you must have a really interesting outlook on something like that, because I mean I've known you for quite a while, and we've seen films together, and we've seen films about the end of the world together. Like, I remember when we saw An Inconvenient Truth Part 2, whatever it was, an inconvenient sequel.
Yes, that's right.
About climate change and these things, when you see them on screen, they sort of help us, I think, to deal with it sometimes.
Yeah, it's interesting that on Netflix, a lot of the films like Contagion have been doing really well. A lot of people have been opting to watch them. It wouldn't really be my choice, but it's a way of processing emotions, isn't it? And it's a way of thinking through real life dramas. It's not always about escapism, the movies.
No, that's right. And I know you've always got a very upbeat, positive sort of energy. When you're working, I've seen you presenting, and I've seen you on telly with the Oscars and all those sort of things. But clearly, from what you're writing, you do look at those sides of film that are holding the mirror up against what's happening. What do you think will be the kind of films that are made or produced after what we're going through?
Oh, there will be many.
I mean, do you know of some already that are in production because of what's happened?
Certainly there are several films coming out and already available that have been filmed on Zoom, so they're mostly coming out obviously television form at the moment, but Dolly Wells, who came on Girls on Film recently, she was involved in one, and it's all recorded on Zoom calls. And there's also Alan Bennett's Talking Heads is coming back with which is sort of monologues by wonderful people like Maxine Peake, and obviously that's perfectly possible to record that on your down the line with a producer on your laptop. So those kind of things, certainly with actors that I've been speaking to lately, those are the kind of projects that obviously are happening at the moment fast, but other things are clearly being written. And I think it's a bit like you're saying about holding up a mirror. It's almost like holding up a mirror to whoever is doing the writing and the conceiving at the moment. Yeah. It's going to reflect their own angst, their own creative concerns, their own concerns about the world. So I think we'll have myriad films coming out of this of all different types, but they might be really especially introspective and especially perceptive, because people are at home with more time on their hands to really ponder and to work on screenplays. So I think in a few years' time, we might have some really great work from this.
Yeah, I'm really interested to know what you think about the subject of quality and production quality, because there's a generation who just think that if you haven't got a £500,000 budget for a movie, and then it's really not a proper film. And then clearly now there's going to be films being made where the resolution and the quality over platforms like Zoom or whatever are obviously really poor, but won't be judged for it. Do you know what I'm talking about? That there's this. I think somebody recently made a film on iPhones. Was it Steven Soderbergh?
Oh yeah, there's been a few iPhone movies, yeah.
iPhone movies where sometimes it sounds like a kind of gimmicky thing to talk about in your marketing, but it's interesting, isn't it? And of course, loads and loads and loads of films are just being released on YouTube and of great quality, but there is a kind of debate, isn't there, about whether it's a proper film or not. What's your thoughts on all of that?
Well, I think this crisis is very interesting because it's showing that people are perhaps realising that content is the most important thing. Of course, we all love a big, slick movie, especially on the big screen, and I'm a big fan of spending lots of money on wonderful cinematography. That's for sure. I don't want to lose that. But, when it can be afforded. But, of course, there are lots of great movies, indie movies, as you suggest, that have been filmed on the cheap in the past. And I think perhaps we'll have more in the future. One interesting thing is that for me, not just as a critic, but as a broadcaster, because I'm experiencing this firsthand at the moment, because just announced, exciting news, Girls on Film, the podcast, is going to be going on YouTube for 3 special episodes, actually filmed, so video episodes. And that's on the BFI YouTube channel. So,
which is such great news, and congratulations.
Thank you.
I want to talk about Girls on Film. It's something that I remember sort of popping up on your Facebook and Twitter feed during the same time. I think that I was working on a project called What Love Would Want, and similarly was sort of responding to the he for she movement at that moment, when which was the United Nations women's group, which kind of aligned with Me Too, and so it was this, and I remember thinking at the time there really should be something which is led by women about our look at films. I don't mean in making films. I just meant that there didn't seem to be many. There was a lot of men talking about films all the time, and on screen and off screen.
Yeah.
So then you how did it come about? I've never asked you that.
Oh, right. Okay. So actually, Girls on Film is the name I came up with for a TV show that I was thinking about and planning with my friend Simone Noakes back in the year 2000, I think, because even then, it was a germ of an idea. Nothing came of it, but we did a few rehearsals and sort of thought, let's do a film show, because exactly as you say, there are not enough women talking about film.
You literally waited for the rest of the world to catch up.
He waited for the rest of the world to
idea.
catch up, yeah. And then I told my agent, Hedda Archbold, who is also a great producer, I told her about the idea, and she had a great idea of turning it into a podcast, so that we could prove how great women are talking about film, and then eventually maybe take it into a visual format. So Hedda and I founded the podcast together, and we started it in 2018, and we're 34 episodes in now at the moment. And we've taken it to Cannes, to Glasgow, to Rotterdam, lots of film festivals. What's been interesting is that so many people have welcomed going to see it on stage. Obviously, we can't do that at the moment, but we've had some wonderful live audience episodes, but also plenty of studio episodes. And the response as well, Kerry Mulligan came on episode 3, and then Maxine Peake and Brie Larson, from the response from the A-list actresses has been phenomenal. They love it.
Yeah. And I remember coming to see one that you did at the podcast festival in London, wasn't it?
Yes.
and at King's Place, and it was, I was really interested to see how many men to women ratio were in the audience.
You counted, didn't you? I was really impressed with that. Thanks for doing my market research for me.
Yeah, always happy to help, Anna.
Can you remind me what the ratio was?
Well, I think it was about 75% women. And I was trying to see how many other males, but I don't know. But it was mostly women, and I suddenly thought, this is it's great. And then on the other side was like, we've got to. It's the same for the he for she movement. Women's equality can only advance, I suppose, if there are as many men as there are women supporting it.
Completely. We need allies. And I appreciate that Girls on Film is called Girls on Film, and that may put some men off from listening, but we certainly don't angle it just towards women. Yes, we talk about gender, we talk about sexism, I like to think we're the fun face of feminism. We do have a real laugh with it, and it is entertaining as well. So, and it's just jolly good film reviews half the time. So I think some men have responded to it for that reason, but then some men who identify as feminists, really enjoy listening to it as well, and they say it makes them think about film differently, which is a lovely compliment. And fathers, I've had quite a few fathers of daughters reach out, like on Twitter, saying how proud they are that this is happening because it's a better future for their daughters, which is lovely.
I know. I mean, it's something that I remember discussing on a panel that I was asked to do on gender parity in the music industry, which similarly across all industries, I think, certainly with entertainment, that there just aren't as many female role models if you're a young girl growing
Absolutely.
up.
Yeah.
So I think it's called Girls on Film. It has to, because you're at the beginning of a sort of period, an era of boundary breaking, aren't you?
Yeah, and I think the idea is to prove how entertaining women talking about film with each other can be, so that eventually, the BBC or ITV or Channel 4 or whoever can have a film show with all women on it, and it not be classed as a niche, because we've had film shows with all men, that's not classed as a niche. So why should a film show with all women not just be a film show?
Yeah.
Or majority of women, whichever.
I agree. And what about, we were talking about quality and the ideas that films themselves, there was one group of people that would say that, making film on an iPhone and isn't as important as making a film with a full production team, with fantastic cinematographers. And again, with talking about the film industry as well. I mean, do you feel it's good that you're in that zone of podcast and internet, or would you think terrestrial television would be a better place? What's your feel, or is it everything? Is there no either or?
I'd like to take over the world. No, I think it's just just why not? I mean, why not have a podcast? Why not have a TV show? Why not have a radio show? I think it could be in all different places at once, and I love, actually, as a film critic, that I do work across most mediums, most media. I obviously I go on TV and radio, and I write, and I do online stuff, I do magazine stuff. So it's lovely to be able to do that, and I think there's no reason why Girls on Film shouldn't be able to do all those things.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm asking really, but I agree with you. And that's sort of how I've led all the work that I've done, is by not listening to people who say, yes, but you have to do it like this. There is no doing it in any way. And I see that in the way that you're approaching it. I just think it's really important for younger people, and certainly perhaps younger female film critics, or people who are women who are interested in going into the kind of business that you've ended up in, and knowing there aren't any rules, are there?
That's right. And it's been really gratifying that a lot of our most ardent listeners are young women who want to get into film in some way. And I quite often get them asking to interview me for their podcasts and stuff, which I love doing. It's always really fun. And there's so many intelligent young women engaged with film, and they just love seeing myself and other female film critics out there doing it, getting paid to do it with any luck. and that gives them more confidence to go into it. So that is what we're hoping is a more gender parity in film criticism, but that's part of the plan, because also with my work in the Critic Circle, we're working on that. But obviously there are more male film critics than female by quite a long shot at the moment.
Sure, but I think of somebody like Mark Kermode, perhaps, who I love, and I love his writing. I think he's fantastic. But I can imagine him as a younger man looking at Barry Norman and thinking, oh, there's a career there, there's a path there, there's a journey. And of course, you wouldn't have had that. So you're the first one, aren't you, in a way?
Wow, that's very nice of you to say that. Well, do you know what I did?
Well, I mean, there's, Lauren Laverne and people like that obviously get involved in those things, but Lauren's multifaceted in everything. She's not particular. You are specifically focused on film, and I think
that's true.
That's quite an amazing thing to pioneer that, because it's much easier for everybody to kind of do a bit of everything these days, a bit of radio, a bit of this, bit of that, but you're very specific about your subject of your specialist area.
Yes, absolutely. And I think as a journalist, having a specialism really helps. And it was a very natural one that it took me a while to find. But when I found it, I knew that it was what I had to do and wanted to do, and I loved it. But I did grow up watching Mariella Frostrup. She used to have a film show. So she was someone that helped encourage me that it was possible.
Yeah.
Not that I want to take away from your thing saying I'm the first, because I'll gladly take that. But she did. She's more versatile.
I've forgotten. I used to watch Mariella on that. What was that show?
Was it
called?
The Big Little Picture Show or something like that?
Yeah, that was it. Was that in the late 90s, maybe?
Probably the 90s. Yes, it was. And what's so lovely is that we're planning to get her on Girls on Film, and her publicist said to me, "Oh, Mariella's a fan," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I've made it," because I'm a fan of her, and it's it's lovely synergy.
That's lovely. I love stories like that. It's a sort of full circle thing. So it inspired you, and now you're going to work with her.
Yeah.
On your show. I think that's lovely.
It's great, isn't it? It's lovely feeling.
God.
Yeah.
So there's a special sort of focus to this show, which is about how people connect. And in the film industry, I mean, that's people in the industry obviously connecting, and then just punters who love films connect quite deeply. So what do you think about where we're at? How film is quite a recent invention in a way, isn't it? I mean, it's only just over 100 years old, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
Compared to many other things that have been going for centuries that exist in our culture. It's sometimes easy to forget how young an art form it is.
Yeah, that's true. There are a lot of exciting things in the future. I mean, obviously virtual reality is something that's getting bigger and more important, and it'd be interesting to see how that develops and whether that is classed as gaming or increasingly as a film experience, an interactive film experience. And the technology with that is getting quite phenomenal. Thinking of connection, actually virtual reality is a really interesting subject. I don't personally know a lot about it, but I have been experiencing it. I've been to sort of shows in Cannes where you can go and get set up with the headphones, and unfortunately it makes you feel a bit sick, as it does a lot of other people, but they're working on improving that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember talking to Trisha Tuttle recently, for the BFI, about the festivals that are expanding into those immersive areas and gaming, and I just wondered if are you very sort of inclusive of those ideas, or do you see film as an art form that is getting diluted by the fact that I think I've met very young people, like sort of pre-teens, who sometimes just see film and gaming as all one great big area of content.
Well, it's all related, isn't it? I think it's easier for us as media commentators to put things in box. Otherwise, where do you stop, and where do you stop specialising? So I will probably never be a specialist on gaming and VR, because it's enough work keeping up with film. As a consumer, you can see that there's a lot of relation between film and gaming and VR, and I think those things are all interrelated. They're all not just entertainment, but they're telling stories. I think the interactive element obviously makes it quite distinct from film, because obviously
Yeah.
in film you cannot control the outcome. Although in some you can interpret it differently in your mind, but you can't change the ending, much as you might want to sometimes. But I think
Yeah.
I'm all for them being included in festivals. Yeah, I think Trisha's got groundbreaking ideas at the BFI festivals, and they do amazing work. And I think to get more people engaged with going through the doors of the British Film Institute and cinemas is going to be increasingly important when lockdown ends, to get young people, as you're talking about, engaged with cinema, engaged with film. And if a way into that is through gaming and VR, then that's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a really exciting time in the history of film, isn't it, with what's happening, and the ability that younger people have to just make stuff, which they didn't 30, 40 years ago.
It's incredible. Really... I've got my friends posting YouTube channels for their children who are like 9 or something, and they've got really good little TikTok videos on there. And like, wow, people they're so creative, so young now, and they're so up with the technology. It is incredibly exciting to think what is going to come out of the younger generations.
Now, obviously, I ended up getting into film via music, starting with music videos, and then different projects like the film that we talked about that I just released the other day. But it is all that's still, to me, Soho is still about music. It's about saving music venues. Everything's sort of attached to music. You've chosen a couple of songs for us to play. I mean, what's your relationship with music in comparison to your relationship with film, which I know is very deep?
Well, you may not know this about me, but I actually started as a music journalist.
I didn't know that.
There you go. We've never had this conversation. I fell into it after journalism school, after university. I got a job on a dance music magazine called Generator, and it was just a job because I liked clubbing, I liked music.
Yeah.
But even though I ended up editing Wax magazine, which was also an underground dance music magazine, I could do the editor's job, and I had a good time in some ways, although it was very stressful because it was very low budget. But I was not a natural writing about music. I really wasn't. It just did not work for me. I adore music. I love music. I think it has incredible power to transport you and to change your mood, and I love dancing. And oh gosh, yes, I love music. But there's a big leap from that to being a good writer about music, and even if you're a good journalist, which I like to think I am. And it just turns out that film was the thing that fitted best with my style and my way of thinking, my way of writing.
And did it? Yes, it did. It sort of resonate with your creative side in a way that music wasn't doing.
Yeah, I think it was partly because film is a lot about people, and I'm, as you know, a real people person, and I'm very interested in psychology, amateur psychology, and how people tick, and relationships, and socioeconomics, and how society works. And I think film obviously explores all those things, and music is a little bit more abstract for me. So I think that's probably one of the reasons that I'm better at writing about film.
It's true. Music is a bit more abstract. And the first episode I did of this series on Super Connected was with Douglas Rushkoff. And he said that when you watch a screen, you really... you're sort of entering into the world of the person who's made what is on the screen, what you're looking at. But when you're listening to music, the music often just enables you to enter into yourself. And be in that sort of space, which is slightly more abstract, and so I've experienced that as well. I asked you what your favourite song is just before we started, and you told me it was The Cure's "Close to You." What is? I mean, it's such a perfect title for where we're at historically, but actually, you've got a personal connection to this song, I assume.
I do. Well, I love The Cure. They were my favourite band for many years, and probably still are. One of my favourite bands. And when I was a teenager, I was a little bit of an alternative, slightly almost gothy, although still blonde.
Were you kind of a goth?
Well, never went the full hog, but I definitely had an indie alternative edge, with...
You were that one blonde goth.
Yeah, people used to call me the blonde goth. They did, actually, at college, sixth form college. So I was quite into all that, and obviously The Cure are one of the best, if not the best goth band out there. Sure. I just think they're absolutely beautiful and creative melodies and extraordinary. So and very emotional sound. And I think when you're a teenager, obviously that really resonates, and you're looking for an outlet for your emotions. So I loved it in my teens. And then when I met my now husband, Ben Robards, I discovered that he is also a Cure fan. One of the reasons we bonded. We bonded, obviously, for many, many different reasons.
You found that out when you were getting to know each other?
Date 2 or something. And we was going, The Cure, Primal Scream. And we're listing all these bands that we both loved. So that was cool.
Yeah, and so your connection with the Cure is the connection with Ben as well. So,
and it goes on because we chose that for our first dance at our wedding.
Oh, that is so beautiful. That song, that was your first
Close
song.
to me. Absolute nightmare to dance to. But
I love this. I'm so soppy. There's we did another interview with Jennifer Dumper, who is a independent dream researcher from San Francisco. You listened to that one, great. But she also chose the song that was her wedding song too. So,
well, I hope it springs to mind to most people when you ask what songs are significant and you have an emotional connection to, because you got to hope that it's that the wedding song if you're happily married. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh! And what's interesting about that song as well is that I noticed his sort of whispering and using his breath as an instrument on that song. I've listened to it a few times since you sent the song request, and it's almost like do you know what ASMR is?
Not sure. Don't think so.
ASMR is this thing that. It's kind of like a craze on YouTube now, but it's a way to listen to a voice recorded that sort of really affects you and affects your ears in a very I don't know. It's very stimulating. It stands for Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response.
Okay. Catchy.
And it's almost I know. And that's if you Google it, or if you just put ASMR into YouTube, you will be shocked to see how many people are tuning in to something that just sounds like it's in their ears. And some people sort of they put their fingers on microphones and things to make people get excited. It sort of it triggers all kinds of emotions. But I think Robert Smith may have pioneered it without realising.
That's a really good point.
on that song.
Yeah, he did have such an intimacy with his vocals, and still does. I mean, I've seen them live quite a few times, and he still actually live brings that quality of that he's whispering in your ear. And it sounds a little bit creepy, but in fact, it's just he does it so beautifully and so sincerely. It's wonderful. Yeah,
and I like those kind of artists that are. I mean, I like artists that change a lot as well. I mean, I love Bowie, but Robert Smith has been such a solid figure in my life since I was at school. He's the same. He still is the same.
But interestingly, their music, while it was always identified with The Cure, did have lots of different tones and flavours depending on the track and the album. Which I liked about them as well. Even though it was still very much The Cure and there were certain aspects that were the same, he could really surprise you at points as well.
Yeah. Now, there's a special subject that I always ask my guests in terms of what they might be connected to in a way that seemed fated, I mean, I suppose for me it would be music, but there's other things as well. But there's some of us have something that just keeps cropping up in our life from an early age, something that we're chasing or it's chasing us, and we're connected to it whether we like it or not. Your sort of connecting theme is graphology.
Graphology, that's correct. It's the study...
Graphology.
Graphology, right. Yeah. It's handwriting analysis. So it's the study of people's handwriting to reveal aspects of their personality. And if anyone has ever had their handwriting analysed by a professional, or indeed an amateur like myself, they will know how extraordinary it can be. It's absolutely phenomenal. You'll be obsessed when you start looking into it. My late mother gave a book to my sister actually one Christmas that had a section on it, and I sort of swiped this and got completely obsessed with it. And since the age of 15, I've been studying it. I've been on lots of courses. I've been reading every book I can get my hands on. and just doing lots of people's handwriting with their permission. At university, that was a popular kind of party sport, I suppose. It is extraordinary, and I know people are sceptical, and some people wrongly put it in the same area as palmistry and horoscopes, which I think is very, very different things. And I'm not to disparage those, but I don't particularly believe in those and the accuracy of those. But it's many studies have shown, and indeed the police use this, how much your writing can demonstrate your personality if analysed properly, and indeed indicate the propensity to commit certain crimes. The French police use it quite extensively, and there's several advisors to the FBI and such like in the US who have cracked cases with the help of this. So it isn't just a namby-pamby thing, and I've found it's something that's, since I've learnt about it, has stayed with me a lot over the years, because even though we write a lot less than we used to, every time you have a birthday you get some cards, hopefully, and such like, and you do see people's writing here and there, especially when you're a film critic and people making notes in screenings, and so I do find that I find out things about people that they would probably not want me to know. And I find out
never
things
writing anything in front of you.
I'm fascinated to see your writing now. I really want to see it. I don't think I've seen it, but I've found out things about myself that I didn't want to know. But it makes you very self-aware. It makes you really analytical, and you know, it's a little warning sign sometimes. You're going, okay, Anna, you're overdoing it. You're clearly exhausted. You're getting a bit manic here. Take a break. So it can be extremely useful. But I found out friends were gay before they came out. I've unfortunately seen when people felt suicidal, or if they've been attacked in the past. It's extraordinary what you can find out. Gosh,
and that's clearly through study. I mean, you've been studying how it works and how to interpret people's handwriting.
Yes.
It's not like you can just plug into it and write. It's not. It's not an app. It's not an app.
It's not an app, and it's quite dangerous, I think, to just dip into it and say, "Oh well, if you write your G's this way, this means X." I mean, occasionally, obviously, as I'm doing someone's writing, I might throw that in that the way they do their G's is a signifier of this. But with every different sign, as they call it, you need at least 4 or 5 other supporting signs, if you like, from other parts of the writing to do with the pressure and the spacing and such like, to make a diagnosis, if you like, to say, okay, this person is definitely whatever, introverted or whatever. So
how do you feel about when we hear news about handwriting sort of being phased out of schooling? I mean, which I heard about in the United States. That's something that's being discussed at the moment. In light of graphology and what it appears to be able to offer us, what do you think about that?
I think it's desperately sad and dangerous, because if this crisis has taught us anything, it's to expect the unexpected. So you never know when we won't be able to use our laptops. You know what I mean? You want to be able to write a note if you absolutely have to. But
do you feel like that about technology, Anna? Do you feel our dependency has reached that point where, you know, a different sort of disaster could happen and we might just have to plug back into ourselves instead of tech?
Well, I've seen Blade Runner, so it could happen. I love technology and I love everything it brings, but I do think it's important to keep aspects of life separate from it, for your own sanity and mental health, as you've discussed on the show before, I'm sure. And I think handwriting is a nice example of that, actually, because even if you don't...
it's lovely.
If you don't know what your writing means, I think you get a sense of it. And even when you look at someone else's writing, it's a very personal thing, isn't it? You know, when you get a card or a parcel in the post, and I obviously instantly recognise people's writing when they send me stuff, so it's just quite nice to go, so send me something. But when you see familiar writing, and you know, you find often that children try to imitate the handwriting of their parents, which in itself says a lot. You know, if they identify particularly with their mother or their father.
I imitated to a degree handwriting of my brother Toby, who you know.
Did you? Yeah. Often that's the case. And that obviously, you know, you don't take a graphologist to know that's because you were trying to emulate certain characteristics of his, or, you know, perhaps trying to be more grown up or whatever it was.
Exactly.
So, and you were probably unknowingly sort of aping characteristics of his that reflected the very things that you wanted to be about, that you liked about him, that you respected and you wanted to have for yourself. So it is
I
actually
think you're right.
quite an important process in development, which I think it would be a shame. But also, we're going back to the crime thing on a practical level. Obviously, ransom notes and forgeries, are often the sort of cases that are solved with the use of handwriting analysis. So, if everyone was typing everything, it would not be as helpful for the forces.
Well, I'm glad you told me that. I'm planning on forging a few.
Yeah, just in case.
Next
Just
week.
so now
to make sure I'll write with my left hand.
Yeah. Oh, that's not necessarily going to fool them. They can work that one out.
What does that mean? What does that mean when people say, to write with a different hand? I've heard sort of psychiatrists say to write things in the hand that you don't normally write in to reveal another part of yourself. Is that right?
Well, I mean, you'd have to ask a psychiatrist, but I'm sure that it stands to reason that it resets your thinking and your mind in a kind of different way. And I think I think they probably are almost acknowledging graphology there, whether they realise it or not, because I think it's a sign of how connected to your brain your hand is when you're writing, and how the two are inextricably linked, and how your mental health is very much connected. So I mean, it's a lot harder to recognise someone's handwriting if they do it with their left hand, or their right hand, depending which they usually use. But there will be certain signs that will generally come through if they write enough, especially if it's not in capitals. If you've got lower zone, yeah.
And I'm kind of guessing that you've done it since you were 15, but are there a few sort of graphology societies that you are a member of?
Yes, I used to be, yeah.
Just be guessing.
Yeah, correct. There's a British Society of Graphology, which I was a member of for a while. I'm not a member now, and I have to say I was quite disappointed, because when I went to the events, I don't mean to be rude, I mean, there were some very good graphologists there, but this was in my 20s. They were all a good 30 years older than me.
Right.
At least, and a very different type of people to me. So I found it quite hard to relate to them other than our shared interest in graphology. I don't know whether that is a reflection of the fact that handwriting is perhaps a dying art, unfortunately, even then, but I think I've started following some people on Twitter. I think in the States there are some younger women doing it now. But this was going to be my alternative career. It was really a toss-up between this and journalism, and I was thinking that the world could use a more young and fun graphologist,
You wanted to make graphology hip.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Can't do it all.
And so just coming back to, we've been talking about a lot of different things, but connection and technology and the old ways like handwriting and the new ways like gaming. There's the connections between the past and the future. I almost feel like this is what we're all stuck in at the moment. Do you feel a sense of where we're going in the future collectively, just in the world at the moment? Because we're all, for the first time in a long time, all in exactly the same position, aren't we?
I think it's really powerful, and I think what's lovely is that even though obviously there have been some crimes and a lot of frustration and sadness, there has been an enhanced sense of community, and there has been that sense of everyone being in the same boat, and I think that's really given a lot of people pause for thought, myself included. And I've always been someone that really loves actually just being friendly to strangers, not like in a kind of mad way, but I love going to music festivals and Burning Man and such, like, to have honest, lovely exchanges with strangers who you wouldn't have met otherwise, but who you find common ground with. And of course, when you're at a festival, you're more likely to have common ground. But I like the idea of being able to go to the corner shop and striking up a conversation with a little old lady who lives around the corner who's a bit lonely. I hope that seems like more of an acceptable thing to do when we're all allowed out more,
Me too. I'm like that anyway.
Yeah, you are. You're brilliant at that. Yeah.
Okay. I just like finding out how nice everybody is, and quite often they are. So I talk to complete strangers as a rule.
Well done. And your job allows you to do that as well. You've created ways of doing that with your work, haven't you?
I think so. I think a lot of people who are either performers or singers or whatever, we do it because we love connecting. And I took those times at the moment where I go out with my little mask to go shopping. Yeah, I mean, I can't start rabbiting to the people in the supermarket.
Yeah, I've noticed that they're the same as well.
I'm sure it irritates some of them. Pardon?
Yeah, but they're the same. I think every time I go to a certain Sainsbury's, whichever person it is behind the counter, they're way more chatty and friendly than usual.
Yeah, it is a sad time. Of course it is. But it's something wonderful in remembering how important connecting face to face, eye to eye, it is to all of us, because now that we don't have it as freely, it's a real jewel of rarity, isn't it?
It really is, and I think if this has given us all the chance to take stock of that and to pause and perhaps not to rush around quite so much in our daily lives as many of us do, then that's definitely a silver lining.
Do you think it'll be like that when we get to a point where we're allowed out to play again? Do you think it's going to be a massive surge of chaos? Or do you think everybody might be actually I'm going to stay at home for another week?
Doubtful, but I think it'll be a mixture. Like, some people will respond differently, which would be helpful, because otherwise the pubs will be overrun. I think there'll be a lot of people going out partying at first, and a lot of single people going on dates. There's no doubt about that.
Oh yeah.
But for myself, I think it will be really nice just to see, and possibly when I'm allowed to hug good friends that I haven't seen for a while, and family. But otherwise, I think actually some things that I have been doing work-wise in person, perhaps doing them online will now be more acceptable and more common. So, for example, I'm hosting quite a lot of online Q&As through Zoom, and it may be that some film companies decide that's a cheaper and easier way to do it in future, and also a way to reach more audience members. So I think it will be a mixture. It will be a bit mad at first, but then I think some things will settle into, the memory of it and what we've gained by this experience.
Yeah, I love your optimistic outlook and your ability to see the glass half full.
Thank you.
During what is one of the, it will historically be known as one of the most trying times we've ever gone through as human beings. Thank you so much for coming and chatting. I've really enjoyed it, and fascinating to hear about all the different sides of your life that are not just to do with film. But thank you for that, especially. Anna Smith, you have been super connected.
Oh, I've loved it. Thank you so much, Jim. It's been such a pleasure to come on.
See you soon.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.